Ghost is the kindly spirited creation of animators Seymour Reed and Joe Oriolo, sold to famous studios as a one-off character. A surprise instant sensation, Casper was the first major character to emerge from the studio, becoming a star of his own cartoons and comic book series and face of a lucrative merchandise line. Over the years, Casper has seen varying levels of fame, appearing on and off again in numerous cartoon series, including one produced by Hanna-Barbera and 5 feature-length films, one produced by Steven Spielberg. In 2020, Casper turns 75 years old, remaining a regular staple in comics and television animation. To celebrate, I will trace his entire evolution from his inception in 1939 to his debut appearance in 1945, right up until now. To do so, we will look at his entire history and spotlight the changes made to his design and personality and the different stylistic approaches employed in numerous projects across nearly 8 decades of cartoons, television series, feature films, and comics. In this edition of Cartoon Evolution. Since the earliest days of the art form in the 1910s, brothers Max and Dave Fleischer of the Fleischer Studio had been revolutionizing the landscape of animation, innovating technologies and introducing the world to groundbreaking characters. By the late 1930s, however, they were facing hard times in a rapidly changing industry. With the Popeye cartoons then their only in-demand series, exhibitors were rejecting all others from them, resulting in enormous monetary losses. The Fleischers attempted to salvage the studio by undertaking a number of extravagantly ambitious projects, but simply found themselves working their employees to the ground and falling further and further in debt to their distributor, Paramount Pictures, soon owing the equivalent of $11 million, adjusted for inflation in 2020. When the Fleischers couldn't pay it off, Paramount led a hostile takeover, removing them from power and absorbing their staff and operations, reforming it anew as Famous Studios in 1942. Famous first released 6 months worth of completed Fleischer cartoons and wrapped dozens left in production. Following this changeover period, they started with a fresh slate in 1943, shifting to an all-Technicolor workflow and cancelling all series but Popeye. In their wake, Famous debuted 2 brand new cartoons, Noveltoons, an anthology series which offered one-shot shorts and featured recurring characters not worthy of their own headliner, and Little Lulu, based on Marge's Sunday comic strip star, a likely attempt to recapture the strip-to-screen success of Popeye. Both series were certainly a lot more innocuous than the studio's previous efforts, with animation historian Leonard Moulton calling the Lulus in particular cute but not cloying, going for smiles instead of belly laughs. Regardless, the series were incredibly charming and both critically and commercially successful, setting a new trajectory for the kinds of stories told at the studio. While various Noveltoons were used to unsuccessfully springboard characters into their own series, they did unintentionally spawn a character who would become one of the studio's most successful and most lucrative original creations. In 1939, a little before the Paramount takeover, Seymour Reed, then a Fleischer story artist and later a prolific author of children's books, developed a concept about a friendly child ghost named Casper and wrote a 3 to 4 page story over the course of a weekend, which, as he said, was complete with title, character development and storyline. Feeling his fable could be sold to the studio on spec or developed into a children's book, Reed enlisted colleague Joe Oriolo to create some illustrations to accompany his text. Oriolo's Casper was quite similar to the character we know today, a wistful child ghost with only a fairly loose bodily structure, depicting him almost as if inside a white sheet, with clear knees but no legs or feet. Also interesting is the hat worn by Casper in these early sketches. Given the tumultuous nature of the coming years, Oriolo, who'd bought the story, sat on it until the early 1940s, finding his window of opportunity to spruik it to the studio when things had settled and ideas began drying up, mostly due to hundreds of artists having been laid off or, like Reed, enlisted in World War II. Then, a studio animator and gag writer, Oriolo sold the story and character concept of The Friendly Ghost to Paramount for less than $200, and it was thrown into development soon after as a one-shot Noveltoons short. In later years, Oriolo claimed that he and Reed had developed both the story and character together, specifically as a children's book, before selling it to the studio as a last resort when no publisher wanted it. His son, animator Don Oriolo, even went as far to say in one interview, "He created Casper in 1944 for my sister, who was afraid of the dark." Other studio artists and studio records, however, back up Reed's story. Further stoking the flames, neither Reed nor Oriolo ended with any on-screen recognition in the final cartoon, with Bill Turner and Otto Messmer receiving sole writing credits for story adaptation. Funnily enough, Messmer was also at the centre of another character dispute, claiming to be the true creator of Felix the Cat, not series producer Pat Sullivan. Another who tried to claim Casper as his own was Schlesinger and Warner Brothers animator Chuck Jones, one of the many Looney Tunes artists who were infamously known to claim credit for the ideas and creations of others. A Me Too guy, in the words of famous animator Isidore Klein. In a 1976 letter to the Pegboard magazine, Jones made what animator Dave Tenglar called a cheap shot when he smugly drew attention to his 1940 short Ghost Wanted, and sarcastically apologised to the famous team for retroactive plagiarism, noting, "We stole the idea of a little boy ghost years before the creation of Casper."
Hello, Treasure Valley. Shields is coming to Meridian, Idaho with a brand new store opening April.
Regardless, 1945's The Friendly Ghost was an almost direct adaptation of Reed's treatment, with Reed noting it served word for word as a voiceover narration for the cartoon. Design-wise, Casper stayed fairly true to Oriolo's sketches, though was given more pronounced legs and feet.
Right?
He was initially depicted as an amorphous blob, or as the short's lead animator John Walworth described him, an ectoplasmic plastic bag. He appeared a lot shorter and stumpier, with an almost shapeless head that blended into his body seamlessly.
Probably by some people, yeah, because he doesn't want to be like the other ghosts and scare.
Yeah.
Friendly Ghost proved incredibly popular with audiences and critics, with one calling it an appealing cartoon with story, speed and charm, with a wee character about which a whole series of cartoons could easily be made. Famous president Sam Buchwald obviously agreed, setting staff the task of devising a sequel to the one-shot short 2.5 years later. Klein noted that studio artists cracked the nut in an afternoon during a lengthy story conference. The resulting cartoon was 1948's There's Good Booze Tonight, which was popular enough that it was followed 1 year later by 1949's A Haunting We Will Go. Both shorts were inspired heavily by the original and essentially told the same story, also presenting the same character design. Audiences, however, didn't seem to mind the familiarity, with the two shorts solidifying Casper as the Noveltoons' first popular original character, or as animation historian Jerry Beck called him, the most significant and longest-lasting original creation the studio ever had. However, Casper's fate certainly wasn't sealed in the Noveltoons. Having proven his worth as a star character, Buchwald quickly approved Casper's own solo series, a decision Moulton calls the most profitable he ever made. Almost immediately, proprietors snapped up character licenses for toys, records, novelty merchandise, and publications. In September 1949, only 4 months after his third short was released, Casper appeared in the first issue of his own comic series, published by St. John Publications, which in only a year was reaching a circulation of over 500,000. Before his solo cartoon series had even launched, Casper was proving lucrative for famous studios. However, Reed and Oriolo, having sold their baby for pocket change, never saw a cent. Reed later said, however, "I'm not mourning or grieving over what I might have lost with Casper. It was fun. I did the story." He continued to work on Casper's, writing gags and dialogue uncredited, while Oriolo left on his own ventures while the original short was in production, soon working with Messmer on Felix the Cat comics and later acquiring ownership of the character himself. Casper the Friendly Ghost launched in October 1950 with Casper's Spree Under the Sea, followed only 2 months later by Once Upon a Rhyme, With his new series, under the direction of Bill Titler, Casper's design was refined and he was made, in Hogwarts words,
Yeah, I
more
know,
humanized. He now had distinguishable legs and feet and a more apparent head. He was also made quite a bit thinner, slightly taller, and overall more appealing. Following the two 1950 shorts, a further 5 Caspers were released in 1951, with between 5 and 7 releasing each consecutive year. Over time, Casper's design only altered slightly, with his shape refining subtly and his level of cuteness varying. Likewise, the plots of the Caspers remained fairly similar throughout his entire run, using the original shorts as the basis for almost every other that followed. The cartoons essentially rehashed a singular plotline over and over. While other ghosts are out scaring people, Casper just wants to make friends, though those he meets are usually spooked by him. He would, however, by short's end, make a friend or two who are willing to look past his ghostliness.
See, and that sounds a lot like Ferdinand the Bull, right? You know, he didn't want to go out and fight, you know?
Mishkin said, "You never knew what the picture you were working on was because they were all exactly the same." And Leonard Moulton questioned why the animators had to bother redoing their work from one film to the next, calling their work filling in the blanks. He even called this Casper's one discouraging aspect, saying it made him the most monotonous character to invade cartoon land since Mighty Mouse. However, animator Myron Waldman defended the decision to copy and paste the Caspers, saying, "I'll bet you any money that a few years from now you take any kid and ask him what pictures he remembers, he'll remember these pictures because they have little stories. But you take a picture that's only gags, they don't remember them. They remember a story more and they can relate to a character more." Despite this, numerous shorts did attempt to break the mold and monotony. 1954's Boo Moon was one of 2 3D films made by Famous and utilises plenty of gimmicky 3D pop-out moments to great effect. While these may often be a distraction in cartoons and films, here they are a breath of fresh air. 1956's Groundhog Play is presented as an adventure ripped directly from a comic book. 1957's Ghost of Honor sees Casper relaying the story of how he got his start in cartoons to a red carpet reporter, giving a fantasized origin story and an animated look behind the scenes of Paramount's animation unit. Likewise, 1958's Ghost Writers takes a behind-the-scenes approach, focusing on 2 storymen struggling to write a new Casper cartoon. While all of these cartoons did utilize the classic Casper making friends formula, they were experimental and original in their narrative structure. Perhaps the most inventive Casper, however, was 1959's Down to Mirth, a Superman cartoon parody and one of very few Caspers from the late 50s which ditched the story structure for cutesy adventures. These later, more experimental shorts coincided with another big shift at the studio, when in 1956 Famous was dissolved into Paramount as Paramount Cartoon Studios. The cartoons were also given a highly stylized makeover, with simplistic backgrounds and angular character designs, an attempt to replicate the success and popularity UPA had with their limited animation cartoons. Casper was presented almost the same, though beginning with that year's Dutch Treat began appearing with a thick blue outline. In 1951, soon before the St. John deal ended, Harvey Comics signed an agreement with Famous to secure print licensing to Little Audrey and other incidental Harvey characters, including Casper, who was headlining yet another comic series by December 1952. Casper arguably became even more popular through the Harvey comics, remaining a staple of them for decades after and making a lot of money for Famous in the interim. What originally started as a simple licensing deal, Jerry Beck would say, became the biggest thing that Famous Studios ever did for itself. The Casper comics even spawned brand new characters, including Casper's uncles, the ghostly trio of Fatso, Stinky and Stretch, Casper's cousins, Spooky the tough little ghost, and Wendy the good little witch, all of whom not only got their own spin-off comics, but crossed over into the cartoons as well. By the late 1950s, not only the quality but the popularity of Paramount's cartoons was declining, and even the Popeye series fell victim, coming to an end in 1957. The Caspers managed to hang around for 2 more years until Paramount sold all of their characters and post-1950s cartoons to Harvey, giving them perpetual rights to Casper and all his friends. Casper's cartoon series came to an end after 55 shorts, with 1959's Casper's Birthday Party, an uninspired cheetah cartoon, which stitched together clips from previous shorts, presenting somewhat of a highlights reel of Casper trying to make friends. Soon after, the Harvey Company formed an animation...
Okay, now that makes sense, because I was thinking, why did that birthday episode seem familiar? Like I've already seen it before. That's why. It's because they reused episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, now I get it.
Called Harvey Films, and
Okay, I'm not losing my mind.
For television as Harvey Toons, utilising them in package series Matty's Fun Day Funnies. The series ran until 1962, garnering Casper's cartoons even more popularity than before. So much, in fact, that Harvey gave Casper his own series the following season. The new Casper cartoon show debuted in 1963 and comprised a combination of both classic cartoons and new ones, especially commissioned to Paramount Cartoon Studio and the original directorial team. While this series ran until 1970, new shorts were only produced for the first season. These 26 new cartoons didn't follow the original narrative structure, though occasionally retained elements of them. Instead, they focused on Casper's fantastical adventures alongside his friends from the comics and classic cartoons. While still fairly innocuous, these shorts seemingly had a lot more creativity and inventiveness thrown into them. Artistically, they were fairly indistinguishable from the later Paramount shorts, though characters appeared less angular and with even thicker outlines. The new and classic shorts would again be bundled in 1990 as Casper and Friends, or The Harvey Toons Show, which remains in syndication today. Casper didn't appear in any new cartoons for almost 16 years, until Joe Barbera, the ideas man at the Hanna-Barbera Cartoon Studio, devised a potential Casper revival series, and alongside other prospective projects, pitched it to NBC president Fred Silverman, famous for commissioning Hanna-Barbera's Scooby-Doo Where Are You a decade earlier.
I could not stand Scooby-Doo.
You what?
Never could stand Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, me neither.
No.
Pitched a spoof of popular series Chips, focused on 2 motorcycle cops, and a spoof of another popular series, Charlie's Angels, focused on a team of feisty female detectives. Silverman knocked back all 3 ideas, so Barbera blended them together to form a space-set series focused on Casper fighting crime alongside 2 feisty female motorcycle cops, Maxie and Minnie, in the distant future of 39.
One of those guys
Silverman approved the idea,
motorcycles.
and Hanna-Barbera secured a license from Harvey to co-produce Casper and the Angels, debuting it in late 1979.
That guy was
the
a
show
jerk.
also introduced Hairy Scary, an elderly ghost who assists the
Since we
trio
weren't
on
buying his
missions with
autograph and
scary
stuff,
criminals.
Oh, yeah.
he had no
Some
time
have
to
noted
talk.
that Hairy Scary
And it was
resembled
wasn't anybody else
Hanna-Barbera's
around.
Captain
It
Caveman,
wasn't like there was
who
a line
likewise
behind us.
appeared in his own Charlie's Angels inspired series, Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, which debuted 2 years earlier. Artistically, the series is indistinguishable from other Hanna-Barbera series of the era, utilising rough, limited animation, though with a certain charm. Casper was given a makeover, appearing much smaller, with a larger head and more distinct legs and feet. The thick blue outline of the later Paramount shorts was also replaced by a thin black one. The series lasted only 1 season for a total of 13 30-minute episodes, comprising 26 new 15-minute cartoons. It was generally well received, despite being viewed less favourably today.
Oh, sick headphones. Mine barely work.
These are great. You should get them.
I know. I really need a new cut.
Following the series' end, Hanna-Barbera produced 2 spin-off holiday specials, both released in 1979, starring Casper and Hairy Scary, both set on Earth in modern day. Casper's Halloween special, also known as Casper Saves Halloween, somewhat returned to the classic formula, seeing Hairy Scary spending Halloween night scaring people, while Casper instead chooses to make friends, with some difficulty. Casper's First Christmas saw Casper and Hairy Scary celebrating the holidays with other Hanna-Barbera characters, including Yogi Bear and Boo Boo, Huckleberry Hound, Quickdraw McGraw, and Snagglepuss, the only time both Harvey Toon and Hanna-Barbera characters ever crossed over, as following these specials, the licensing agreement between the two parties expired. Casper was originally set to appear in Disney's 1988 animation live-action hybrid film Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where he would have been seen in a sequence alongside Popeye, Felix the Cat, Foghorn Leghorn, and Donald and Daffy Duck. The scene didn't make the final cut, and Casper was absent from the screen in new material for another 15 years. In 1995, however, Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment gave him his very first theatrical feature film. Casper was produced as a CGI live-action hybrid, a first for distributor Universal Pictures, and featured Casper and the Ghostly Trio as CG animated characters and human characters portrayed in live action. Releasing in the same year as Pixar's Toy Story about a few months earlier, Casper became the very first film to star a CGI lead character. While fairly primitive, the CG animation actually holds up quite well, with the characters taking on a cartoony appearance.
He was kissing that ghost.
Feeling too dated. Interestingly, while Casper appears in a design close to that of the cartoon series, he appears with large blue eyes and overall more spirit-like, with no legs, similar to Oriolo's original design. In one sequence, Casper even appears in human form. The film was incredibly successful, making nearly $300 million at the worldwide box office on a $55 million budget. It became the 6th highest grossing movie of the year domestically and 8th highest worldwide, introducing Casper to a new generation of kids the world over. This success spawned 2 direct-to-video prequels produced by the Harvey Company, who retained the rights to make them without the involvement of Amblin or Universal, instead using 20th Century Fox as a distributor. 1997's Casper: A Spirited Beginning aimed to provide a more concise origin story for Casper, while 1998's Casper Meets Wendy saw Casper out to defeat an evil warlock alongside Wendy the Good Little Witch in the character's first live-action appearance, portrayed by a 10-year-old Hilary Duff in her first major role. In both, the design of Casper and the Ghostly Trio remained fairly similar to the Universal film, though the CGI was less advanced on a lower budget. Both films were terribly received by critics, with Spirited Beginning's critic score sitting at 0% and Casper Meets Wendy's at 17% based on original reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience scores for both are significantly higher, and as a kid of the 90s, I can say I enjoyed them both back in the day. A direct sequel was planned by Universal, however, due to the inability of Ricci and Pullman to return, the proposed story ideas were redeveloped as The Spooktacular New Adventures of Casper, a cartoon series set within the world of the movie and produced by Universal Cartoon Studios, Amblin Television, and Harvey. The series starred animated versions of the film characters, featuring a legless Casper, who was depicted instead with a stub tail for the first time in the cartoons. Casper's cousin Spooky made regular appearances, along with his girlfriend Poyle, who transitioned from comics to cartoons for the first time. The series was well received and ran for 4 seasons between 1996 and 1998, with 50 episodes and 143 individual stories. Universal allegedly revived sequel ideas at some point in the mid to late 90s, however, due to poor reception and sales figures of the prequels, it was once again scrapped. In 2000, however, Harvey released another Casper film, Casper's Haunted Christmas, an entirely CG animated direct-to-video prequel. It featured the ghostly characters from the previous films, once again in the same design, alongside Spooky and Poyle, likely due to their newfound audience familiarity thanks to Spectacular Adventures. Though Harvey had been publishing new and classic Casper stories almost consistently since the late 1950s, by 1994 they found themselves close to bankruptcy and sold the publishing and distribution rights of their characters to Marvel Comics. Marvel initially published a one-shot comic adaptation of the film in 1995, and then in 1997, Marvel UK produced a 2-issue limited series set within the Spectacular Adventures world. These issues were later printed in the US as Casper and Friends magazine, alongside stories featuring other classic Harvey characters. In 2001, due to circumstances surrounding the company's financial condition, Harvey went into liquidation and completely sold all of its characters, stories and film library for $16 million plus debt to Classic Media.
Santa?
Hey, Michelle.
Do you want to use the front door